On the Market, Ontario's real estate show. And now here are your hosts, Asif Khan and Tina Cortese.
Well, hey there, we are back. This is On the Market, Ontario's real estate show. I'm Tina Cortese, and my co-host from Remax Prime Properties is Asif Khan. Great to see you again, Asif.
You too, Tina. It's been a while.
There has been a great deal to talk about. So let's start with looking ahead to 2025. January is just about in the books. What can you tell us about this first month in real estate?
It's been surprisingly busy. I mean, we saw a little bit of an uptick in December, and we figured that momentum should carry us through into the winter and maybe even push the spring market up a bit into a late winter spring market. But it started right away. January 3rd, January 4th, our agents were busy, lots of deals happening, and things that have been sitting on the market for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months have started to move.
Now, on January 29th, the Bank of Canada lowered its key interest rate by 0.25 percentage point, bringing it to 3%. How do you expect that rate cut to impact the market?
I think it's a step in the right direction. I think a lot of consumers, a lot of buyers and sellers were anticipating this move, so it wasn't a surprise by any means. However, it's a welcome change, even for people that have lines of credits and may want to borrow some money in order to get into an investment property or pre-construction. That change is a huge change compared to the rates that we were looking at about a year ago last year.
Okay, I want to talk about pre-construction in a moment, but let's talk about the current climate, the threat of a possible trade war with the United States. Do you think that will have an impact on the market, on your clients? Do you think they're going to be a little bit more cautious?
I think they will be. I think we've learned from what's happened over the last couple of years that it's better to be cautious than to jump right into it. So we are going to see a little bit of a holdback, I think. However, the pent-up demand that's been around for about 18 months will still continue to fuel the market. People still have to, move into the houses that they need in case they're growing or downsizing. And I think that's going to be where the market heads. Although people will be a little bit careful, they're not going to bite off more than they can chew. I think it's a welcome sign to see the market just explode right off the gate. And I think we're in for a pretty busy late winter, early spring market.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. The next rate announcement from the Bank of Canada isn't expected until March. What do you think is going to happen between now and that time?
We're going to start to see cautious optimism. And with that, I think people are ready to make that jump into home ownership. We're also starting to see some renters possibly moving into home ownership as their leases come up. So there's a lot of demand for that starter price point. So anything under $900,000 or so right now is starting to move. Where we aren't seeing a lot of movement is the condo market. That seems to be pretty quiet right now, but we're anticipating that to really pick up by the end of the year. So it's still early for the condo market, but the attached homes, the semi-detached, the detached homes, they've really started to move over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
You talked about pre-construction. How is that segment of the condo market specifically?
Very quiet right now. There's a lot of deals being had out there if you are looking for pre-construction, but people have they've shied away from pre-construction just because the price points that were being asked weren't meeting up to appraisals that were coming in. And that really affected people. Again, with pre-construction, a lot of people will dip into their equity in their home. So a line of credit or a home equity loan in order to purchase that pre-construction. And when rates were really high, it was almost unaffordable to be able to carry that. It was a second mortgage, right? So people were shying away from pre-construction. And now I think they're going to start getting back at it. There's some pretty decent deals out there for pre-construction. And with the promise that the condo market will start to take off and will start to absorb some of that inventory, now it's going to make room for people to go out and buy these condos and be able to rent them out. There's a huge influx in condos on the rental market and even for sale right now because people just weren't able to make the rents meet their needs and be able to pay their mortgage. So they put it on the market.
And our first guest coming up will talk specifically about the rental market. But if we're looking at the condo market, the last few years, it was an opportunity for folks to get into the market by purchasing a condo. Is that still the case?
It still is. However, we haven't, there's so much on the market for condos right now. If you're looking for a deal in real estate, that's where the deals are. And that's just because of saturation. So the first time buyers that are looking for a condo, they're able to get in at a really good price right now. And also, you're starting to see people that were renting. Now they're going to look at this opportunity and say, I was paying so much rent. This may be an opportunity for me to pay a little bit less or even the same that I'm paying in rent and be able to get into a home. There's a lot of incentives that have been out there over the last couple of months from CMHC, 30%, 30-year amortization. And also now you can go up to $1.5 million and not have to put 20% down. So those two incentives have been huge. People have been using those in order to lower their monthly payments and also to be able to put a little bit less than 20% down, because before, if you purchased anything over $1 million, you had to put 20% down. So that $500,000 shift is absolutely huge. And it's even bigger than a 0.25% interest rate drop, because that has allowed people to enter the market with less money.
So, when we're talking about the condo market specifically, and I know this is on the market, Ontario's real estate show, but let's focus specifically on Toronto, the GTHA. What is the average price of a condo, one bedroom in the GTHA at this time?
A one bedroom, again, it depends on if you're looking in the 905, the 519, or the 416. But if you're looking particular downtown, you're going to expect to pay between $750,000 and $900,000 for a one bedroom, depending on where it's located. In the 905, you could probably get away with about 650. In the Markham area and stuff like that. Some of the older condos, the newer ones, are selling for about $1,400 a square foot in the 905. But in Toronto, they're at almost $2,000 a square foot. So it's a huge difference. And then you've got the difference in what the charges are for parking spots and everything. So it's a lot more affordable outside of Toronto than it is within the city limits.
But there is a certain cachet about having a condo in 416. So you're paying a premium to be in that area code then.
You are. And a lot of people are going back to in-person work as well. So we've started to see them come back. They had moved out to Wasaga Beach, Barrie, Orillia, and now they're starting to come back into the city. So if they've already purchased a house in the outlying areas, they're picking up a small condo in Toronto so they can work there. So we're starting to see a lot of that come back as well. And a lot of them are renting too, so that they can go back to the home that they purchased over the weekend. But, there's hybrid work and then a lot of in-person work now, and that's driving people back to the city.
The condo market was also an opportunity for maybe that investor, the small landlord, to take a step in that direction. Is that still a possibility for those people?
So that's a tricky question because it depends on the condo itself. There is still a lot of people that are underwater in terms of what they're collecting in rent and what they have to pay in terms of a mortgage. So if people are savvy, they're going to be evaluating what the return is on those condos. And this is why Ontario lost a lot of investors to Alberta. It was much cheaper and much more lucrative to go out to Alberta to buy condos in Calgary and now Edmonton, because they were picking them up for about $250,000 to $350,000. Renting those out for even $1,400 or $1,500, it makes a lot more sense than purchasing something here for $750,000 or $800,000 and only getting about $2,500 or $2,600 from it. So that's why we lost a lot of our investors to other provinces, because they were putting their money where the return was better.
Okay, so let's round out this portion of our conversation where we started. A look ahead to 2025. If you were to take a guess and talk about what the future looks like in terms of real estate for the next 6 or 8 months, how would you describe it?
I think we're going to see a lot of activity. We're going to see a lot of sellers coming back on the market. They may have taken their homes off the market, but they're going to re-enter the market. The buyers have already started to come out. So in that price point, which is under $900,000 right now for a home, whether it be a townhouse, a semi, a detached home, they're already getting multiple offers and people are getting priced out of that market. So now those are the people that are going to be jumping back into the condo market because that initial segment for home ownership has been taken away from them in terms of homes. So that's how the market is going to go for the first time buyers. I think in the next couple of months, we're going to start to see the middle take off. And then maybe in 3 or 4 months, the high end market will take off. But it all points to a very busy 2025. Conservatively speaking, even if we had a 10% increase in units sold, that would be huge because last year was the second worst year over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So a 10% increase in units sold will be great. And I anticipate that pricing will continue to climb. So a lot of people were thinking, we'd have a lull and pricing would level off or maybe even drop. But we're going to see pricing increase by about 5 to 8% across Ontario.
On the market.
We are back on the market, Ontario's real estate show, and it's time to switch gears and we will focus our attention on the rental market. Asif.
We are, and we have Giacomo Ladas back from Rentals.ca. Giacomo, welcome back to On the Market.
Hey, thanks, guys. Always great chatting with you, too.
Giacomo, before we look at 2025, let's do a recap of 2024. What was the rental market like overall in 2024?
Yeah, I think overall the rental market has really softened across most parts of the country, and this is following, of course, record-breaking growth in 2022 and 2023. And also in those years, we saw multi-decade highs in apartment completions, which is great because we needed a lot more supply, but also we saw a slowdown in population growth and, of course, unfortunately, a weakening economy. And because of that, what we saw in 2024 was really the start of a renter's market where asking rents in most of Canada's major cities saw quite large decreases. And on top of that, we started to see the return of move-in incentives. Of course, this is when landlords or property managers are now offering and enticing renters to come to their building, such as free month's rent. Sometimes they're giving out free gym memberships, free internet or cable. So it's really become a renter's market now where we're starting to see demand slow down a little bit. We started to see a slowdown through population growth and the weakening economy, unfortunately, of people having less money. And because of that, it's actually a little bit more favorable now if you're looking to get an apartment, if you're a renter.
Are you surprised by that?
I think I'm surprised just at how quickly it happened. I think Calgary is a really good example. As early as February, March, April of 2024, Calgary was seeing double-digit annual rent increases. And then that completely flipped where throughout 2024, Calgary actually had the largest decrease in asking rents of 7.2%. So it happened really quick. I think what's surprising to me is just how quickly renter preferences have changed, and they're not really going back, I don't think. Secondary markets have really increased. The deprioritization of living in downtown cores is still strong. If you asked me a couple of years ago, I would assume when we can go back in the office and go back and living in these downtown cities, people are going to go. It hasn't really happened as fast as I thought. And because of that, we've really seen a leveling off of asking rents across the country where secondary markets are now increasing and then these primary markets are coming down. So it's quite interesting.
It is. And also, I think the commuters or the way people commute has really allowed them to move a little bit further from the city itself. Go Transit is better right across the province. We've got, improved busing systems like Viva throughout York Region. How much of that plays a role in people maybe living 10 or 15 minutes away from work?
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. And we were actually even seeing the extreme of that where rent, when it increased so dramatically over the last few years, people were still willing to commute to the office a couple days a week, even if that was 2.5 hours away, because they were still saving so much rent living in Burlington as opposed to living in downtown Toronto. So, yes, the accessibility of going into the office again is huge. We are really starting to see that prioritization where renters are not going to pay these premium rents in this economy unless they have to. And if they don't have to, through an improvement in transportation, they're not going to. So I think that's a huge part, and it's it's a good thing because we needed this. We needed supply to increase in primary and secondary markets. We needed a large influx in transportation services to connect everyone together. So in one way, I think that's a really good thing.
Are there areas that have greater rent availability at this time? And what is that average rent across the GTHA?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And what we're really seeing right now, the average rent right now in Toronto for a one bedroom is around the $2,300 to $2,400 a month rent range. In the two bedroom right now is just over about $3,000, and that is about a 6 to 7% decrease from the same time last year. What we are seeing is a increase in vacancy rates across the country. So that means there's more just empty units available. And we are starting to see turnover rates increase a little bit because what's happening now is if you are an in-place renter and you're starting to see rent prices coming down, well, maybe I'll move to a different apartment now because it's become more of a market where, hey, if I move to this apartment, I can get free internet and save a month or two of rent. So we're now seeing property managers and landlords really prioritize keeping that in-place renter because it's become a little bit more of a friendlier market for a renter. But what we're seeing right now is areas like Alberta really increase the amount of supply. Alberta's a lot faster in getting shovels to the ground and bringing new supply. So that place has really skyrocketed, as well as it's seeing the biggest effects of a decrease in demand because Alberta was calling and a lot of people from Toronto went. They're not going as fast anymore because they're not calling anymore. So we're really seeing Calgary bring in supply a lot faster. Montreal has seen a really increase in supply coming to the market. And we're also seeing it in Toronto as well. You really can't go anywhere without seeing cranes coming to the market. But what has changed big time is we are shifting from condos being built to purpose-built rentals. And we are seeing the type of purpose-built rentals change where people either want right now, and we're seeing it on our site, they want a studio apartment because it's the cheapest, but they're also wanting the biggest apartments, like a three-bedroom the most, because people are not buying homes either. So when they're looking for a rental, especially a first-time renter, you're actually looking to be here for a long time. So they want the biggest space available. So we're starting to see purposeful rentals come into the market. Condo prioritization is really going down, and the need for three bedrooms is really starting to increase, and we're starting to see that reflected, which is, I think, a really good thing as well. And not only are three bedrooms good for a family who wanted to stay there for a long time, but me and two of my buddies can rent that apartment and split the rent three ways. So it's another good thing that we're starting to see.
I just have a follow-up question just before we pass things over to Asif. How hard are those three-bedroom condos to find?
Yeah, they're not easy to find. What we are seeing just on our site is purpose-built rentals have remained pretty stable in asking rents over the last few months, where the condos and the townhomes are seeing the steepest drops. Um, I'm assuming they were built to sell. They're not selling. So these investors are trying to recoup some of their losses quicker, and their asking rents are a little bit more favorable. So it's really in these townhomes and these condos that are seeing quite large decreases in asking rents, where personal rentals are staying pretty stable.
And Giacomo, if you were to look at that list,
Yeah.
what would be two surprises that jump out to you, both, the ones that increase the most and maybe the ones that decrease the most? What would be two surprises that you found in the report?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think you know, if we want to stick in Toronto here, I think I'm surprised that all through 2024, when we looked at the list, rental prices in Toronto were going down. I think in the totality, I thought it might be just in January, February, March, but then throughout the summer, rents continued to decrease when typically that was the peak rental season, and rents continued to go down. So, what really stands out to me in areas like Toronto, it's maintained 6, 7, 8% annual decreases throughout all through 2024. And this is for studio, one and two bedroom apartments. It wasn't just one type of rental. all of them are going down in prices. I was pretty surprised to see areas out east. Halifax demand has been really strong. They were still seeing double digit rent increases of 10, 11% for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. We were starting to see it as well as we move farther away from Toronto. Areas like Niagara Falls has seen a large increase in rents for 1 and 2 bedrooms of 7, 8 to 12% in some cases. We are seeing a ton of people come in the Niagara region from Toronto, move down to Niagara because there's been a ton of new development there. So demand is really increasing. I think also it's kind of interesting to note that Winnipeg, even though the asking rents in Winnipeg for a 1 bedroom apartment is $1,400 a month, that's an 18% increase from this time last year. So even though it's a big major city and rents are a lot more affordable as opposed to other areas across the country, it shows that demand has still been strong and people are still willing to go to these, I don't want to say secondary cities, but they really are in some way. They're not the Torontos or Vancouvers. They're willing to go if rent is cheaper. And I think that's going to continue throughout 2025. The resilience of Edmonton, still seeing 10% increase for a 1 bedroom apartment. The resilience of Winnipeg, Quebec City, these areas that are more affordable, people are now going there and prioritizing it pretty strong. So what I'm expected to see throughout 2025 is people are probably going to slowly come back to these downtown metro areas, the Torontos, the Vancouvers, because rents are now more affordable, and I expect them to slowly come back. But these secondary markets and these provinces like out east or Calgary, where rents are still pretty competitive, I'm very interested to see what happens there because I think as demand kind of slows down through, migration internationally, but also through, international immigrants, I'm going to see where people are going to go because I think they're going to still go to the more affordable markets throughout 2025.
Giacomo, always great to have you on. Good to see you again. And we'll chat with you again next month.
I look forward to it, and hopefully we have some more good news for renters out there.
Awesome. Thanks, Giacomo.
Thanks, guys.
On the market.
Joining on the market next, one of those guests who always has such shocking stories to share. Asif?
That's right, Tina. Joining us is Simona Zaslavsky from Mayfair Law Group. Simona, welcome back to On the Market.
I missed you guys. How are you?
We're doing well, and you?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for having me back. Thank you for giving me another platform to speak my mind and to talk about our favorite topics always.
Uh-oh.
And speaking of, what's happening with the LTV?
I know that everyone knows that I'm the advocate of the negative. But because I'm such an advocate of the negative and because I'm so outspoken about the LTB, I actually have some shocking positive news, which is a great thing for landlords and investors and all those people that are starting to lose faith. My partners in real estate, have been telling me that the lineups and the forms and the orders, the times have now shortened. It took them a couple of years to get here, but it seems like they're getting here. So where I was experiencing wait times of 8 to 12 months, they're looking at 4 to 6 months now for eviction, not orders, but eviction conferences. So to get in front of an adjudicator, it takes about 4 to 6 months from the date your application is filed.
And I guess landlords consider that a lot more reasonable in terms of a period to be in front of an adjudicator.
Sure, when you're looking at 8 to 12 months now, and we got used to it. We got used to these long wait times that 4 to 6 months, even though it doesn't make sense because if you're in the States, if you're in Arizona, for example, I have a property there where I had a non-payment issue. She was out in 30 days. 30 days, that sheriff was knocking on her door. And for us, it was 8 to 12 months. And now we're looking at 4 to 6 months. We're like, wow, this is great. It's still 4 to 6 months, guys. It's do the math. That's expensive. And once you get in front of the board, Once you get those, if you get that decision in front as you're there, never happens. You got to wait for the order. Those orders would often take 30 to 90 days, closer to 90. So now we're actually looking at 30 days.
And the Ontario Real Estate Association had submitted a paper to the government, and a lot of those changes have gone into place. And one was, the minor changes in an application would not allow an application to get thrown out. Have those measures helped a little bit in speeding things up and also maybe protecting the landlord a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it also allows more landlords to come to the board without fear, because when you do something like that, when you use things like, if you do a little mistake and everything gets thrown out after a year, it discourages people and it makes them scared. And when you're scared, you never act properly. You never use your logic when you're scared. So it definitely helps that if I don't add basement into my original application, it doesn't get thrown out. Yeah, it's wonderful. I could still try to save my house and not go bankrupt.
So, how does a landlord try to preemptively avoid challenges with their tenant?
I always preach communication when it comes to any type of relationship, whether it's with your realtor, mortgage broker, boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, child. It's all about communication in your relationship. And it's all how your relationship starts off in the beginning. It's all about setting that groundwork in the beginning and maintaining it. If you are a landlord and you don't go and visit your tenant and you don't go and view your property for year one, for year two, for year three, okay, well, guess what? Of course they're going to feel like it's their place. Of course they're going to feel like they're entitled to all of this. They don't have to answer to you. Who are you? You've disappeared for who knows how long. So always make yourself present. Always make that effort with your tenant and with your landlord too.
And Simona, you said a lot of this is being resolved in 4 to 6 months, but suppose 4 to 6 months, you get your hearing, you get an eviction notice. What's next? How long is a tenant still in there?
I would say roughly 20 to 30 days at most. It could be quicker depending on the area. Of course, certain jurisdictions are quicker with their sheriffs than others. There's not as long of a wait line. I'm sure Toronto and Brampton are very long wait lines. But I would say from 10 to 30 days.
Simona, one of my favorite parts of our conversations with you is that you sometimes share some really great but horrific horror stories. What have you got for us this time?
I had a landlord who had a house that he was renting out the rooms. And this tenant was a problem for him post COVID, just after COVID. And the application went in, the landlord did it himself. It got lost because they changed the system. Long story short, the guy was living there for a few years. When I got involved, that's when this tenant started to act out. And it got to the point where I was sent a video that the tenant was calling the police saying that I was in the house, not harassing him, that I was beating on him. So he said that I came into the house and that I was assaulting him, that I was hitting him with frying pans. And I'm watching the video of him calling the cops. I was in my office telling the cops that I was in that house physically assaulting him. So I think it was after that time that I kind of said, justice isn't going to happen here. I'm never going to make these landlords happy. I'm fighting a battle that I may never win. So I kind of have to decide, where do I go from here? And that's why now all I really do is educate and give advice. I really, really, really want landlords to educate themselves more than anything, tenants as well. So that's where I stand at this point. But that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Cash for keys was really big about a year ago. Is that still a thing? Are landlords still having to pay tenants to leave, or has the lesser wait time resolved some of that?
Cash for keys is huge because when someone wants to sell their house and they want to sell it yesterday, they want it completely empty. They want a completely vacant property. And the only way to do that, because tenants are so smart, they have educated themselves, they have armed themselves with information that they know. I have done so many cash for keys agreements in the last year. It's crazy. And the numbers are crazy. The landlords are willing to spend $30,000, $40,000 just so they can offload the property. Not changed.
If our listeners have any more questions or want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Instagram is so popular. So just find us at Mayfair Law Group and the DMs come right to me.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us, and great to have you back.
Thank you, guys. Great seeing you both.
On the Market.
Well, it's just about time to wrap things up on the market. Asif, last piece of advice for your clients who are listening right now, whether they're buyers or sellers.
I think for the sellers, we're starting to see a lot of traffic out there. So if you've been holding off, what you want to do is you want to get on the market before all the neighbors get on the market. So make sure your house is prepared, make sure it's ready, maybe over a family day weekend or so, and get it on the market, because you're going to be able to take advantage of the large number of buyers that are already out there. The buyers have already jumped off that fence and they're out shopping for deals. And if they do come across your house and it presents as the best house on the street, or shows the best on the street, you're probably going to end up with multiple bids on it. We're starting to see people hold back on offers now in terms of agents, and they are getting 3, 4, 5 offers. Nothing crazy. They're still able to maybe get a home inspection condition in or financing condition in, but you're going to start competing, and you're going to have to make sure that all of your mortgage details, everything is in place. Because if you are competing, that's one way to win it, is to be prepared.
All right, so it sounds like a seller's market. Do you anticipate that properties will go over asking?
They're starting to go over asking now, and it really depends on how agents are pricing these. There's a lot of agents that will take the lazy way out and price at $200,000 or $300,000 under asking, and or undervalue, and then say they got over asking. But the properties that are priced relatively at market value, they're selling for roughly around market value, maybe full price. We are seeing the odd home sell for 10, 20, 30,000 over. But when a home sells for $100,000 over, you really have to question the list price and see if it was the home that created that demand, or if it was a low list price to start with.
Those days, not that long ago, where homes were selling way over asking, I think it was just after the pandemic. Those days are gone?
Those days are gone. And I think people are going to be more cautious moving forward, because they don't want to get into a situation where we saw people were in last year, where they were forced to sell because of the decisions they made in that heated market. So I think people are going to be a little calmer. They're going to do more research. And I think the realtors are a little bit better now than they were. A lot of these realtors started in 2020, 2021. And I think the experience that they've had over the last couple of years with the down market really does help in helping them guide their clients properly.
Asif, if our listeners want to connect with you, how do they do that?
And they can always reach me at 416-985-5426, and I'd be happy to chat with them.
This is On the Market, Ontario's real estate show. Find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. I'm Tina Cortese for Asif Khan. Thank you for listening.
On the Market, Ontario's real estate show.